snuck to a window to leave her a note. Will you come meet me at the back of the grove? All the trees were in bloom, that sweet smell in the air. We were trembling together. We were young, we were scared, yeah. True love, hard to find. I can smell those orange blossoms. I can see us standing here. When I smell those orange blossoms, then I'm there.
Well, welcome to Chapter 1 of Environmental Literacy in the Environmental Science and Sustainability course. We are on the road to collapse, some say, but we're going to look into Chapter 1 here to see what lessons we can learn from a vanished Viking society. As the picture represents in front of you, what does this mean? Well, on the road to collapse, here is our main concept for this particular lesson. Humans are dependent upon a healthy planet. Our choices can be sustainable, or they can put excess pressure on our resources. As a result of this lesson, I hope you will understand what impacts humans have on the environment, or can have on the environment, and how environmental literacy will help us make informed decisions in our lives, and what it means to be sustainable, and how individuals can help, such as yourself. Well, in order to study this, we can start out by thinking about a case study. This case study asks you to think about the Viking settlers in ancient Greenland. Well, I say ancient, but it's basically around the 900s AD or so. Basically, some of the Vikings left their native lands, sailed across the stormy North Atlantic seas, and finally settled in the southern tip of Greenland. During this transition, the settlers relocated their old way of life to the new land, and quickly found out that their land could not support their agricultural methods. They found out that the summers were very, very short. They were cold. There was permafrost. The agriculture found it tough to survive and take root and flourish like it did there, and they quickly used up a lot of the existing resources in this southern tip of Greenland area. And over a relatively short period of time, the Vikings died out. The only way for us to find out what happened to this ancient civilization on this barren, remote tip of Greenland in the North Atlantic Ocean is for the archaeologists to do what they do best, seeping through remains and ruins of ancient civilizations, and to figure out what we can learn about this society. Well, environmental science sounds like such a great buzzword these days, but environmental science is a very important and complicated science to think about. Well, first of all, what is environmental science? Environmental sciences basically are composed of the natural sciences, things like climatology, climates. Of course, you have the atmosphere, astronomy, and then you have meteorology and biology and chemistry and physics and all of the classic natural sciences you can think of, engineering, technology. And then you start to ask questions that are a little bit more interdisciplinary, like what is climate like? Or which plants live over there? Which animals can live here? Why couldn't our cows and agriculture sustain living to the new land in Greenland? How come they all died? But why could they live back in different lands? What crops or animals can be raised here or there or anywhere? And how can soil erosion be prevented? How can we grow all of the orange trees and palm trees and everything down here without our soil washing away every time we have a rainstorm? And what are the types of things that we are doing to make sure that we can sustain this practice? And above that, even if we wanted to understand all these things, we really would be doing so by consuming some sort of energy to keep us warm at night, to fuel us fire to cook, or even to light up some lamps to see at night, or even to the modern day, which is doing exactly what you're doing, viewing your iPad or laptop to listen to this lecture. Everything uses energy. So the question is, what energy sources are available where you are? How are they available where you are? And what impact do they have on the environment? You ever wonder when you plug your plug in, where does the power come from? Well, however, it is also an intersection with humanities. Humanities is really this study of the human side of basically our lives, right? It's people expressing loves and fears through literature and poetry and art and music and sport and drama and personalities and writing and reading and language and all these wonderful, beautiful things that we have in life that make the human existence very bold and colorful. But also we have these ideas of religion and spiritual traditional influences, and how did those affect our daily lives? Finally, you take all these people and put them on different parts of the planet, and you have all kinds of different spiritual, religious, and personal expressions happening around the world, and how can we make sense of all this? Or it's very, very difficult to make sense of all of it, but that's what the humanities try to do. And ultimately, we have the social sciences. We look at the natural sciences. We think about the humanitarian aspect of that. And then we look at it in the social science lens. And this lens tries to ask, well, why do people live here? And how do the people live here? Not how do they live here, like what kind of crops can they grow, can they eat? Although that could be very intertwined with their humanitarian methodologies and their social sciences as they interact as a society. But what policies are in place? What type of social issues and societal constraints and social problems or in effect anything happens to make the society a society? We have laws and rules and regulations in our country and states and towns that we follow to help our civilizations flourish. Well, what about all of these different places around the world and over time? These things can change and be different, and, well, who's right and who's wrong, and is that even a question to be asking? What if things need to change? What if we thought we did something right, but we actually did something that may be harmful to us or the environment, or maybe you put the cat food in the wrong spot and the cat can't reach it? Well, how do you make a change to your life, to make it enjoyable for yourself and for everybody? Well, what if not everybody wants to make those changes? So what do? What types of things can you engage in? And ultimately, these are the kind of decisions that need to be made that will affect the society and affect how peoples will operate. And last but not least, why not think about what type of energy sources can help this particular society thrive, and how are they used, and what does it mean when they're used? So when you add all these up together, it seems rather complicated. But you can quickly see that environmental science is no longer just a science. We are actually more likely to see conflict in societal or political terms rather than with the natural environment. Well, when we study a plant, the plant doesn't really talk back to us, does it? But the interdisciplinary play between natural and applied sciences allows us to have a better understanding of our relationship and ultimate dependence with the resources of the planet and each other. So if environmental science is all-encompassing, then how do we do it? It seems nearly impossible. Yeah, I know, it does. But there is a way. There is an approach that we take to environmental science that will help a systematic way of investigating the natural world and its interactions between humans and species and everything around the world. Scientific investigation uses a systematic approach that begins with observation and then generates questions from those observations, and then uses those observations to generate more questions, and then uses those questions to make more observations. And it's like a never-ending circle. And in fact, it is a never-ending circle. When we can use what we learn about one series of observations and experiments to inform our actions and generate many changes or many other different situations. So we can keep looking and seeing what else is going on. I like to use the example where I come from in New England. Oftentimes in the fall, the leaves fall off the trees. Well, if a kid asks me how come the leaves fell off the trees, well, then why did that question pop up? Well, the kid had to see that the leaf fell off the tree. Well, if that's provoking a question, he couldn't have had that question without the first having an observation. And if some leaves fell off the trees before others, which they do, why is that the case? Well, now we have a question leading to other questions based on observations. And this is what we do. The guy down there on the bottom of the screen that looks like he's totally polluting the environment by pouring a bunch of red or pink ink into the ice is effectively not doing that at all. In fact, those are very safe dyes, and what they're used is to measure flows of ice and liquids in melting phases of these particular ice systems to see where the water goes and the patterns in which the ice moves to help us predict what happens to these cryo structures, essentially. But because environmental problems are often more complicated than they appear, our ability to understand the natural world and accept the trade-offs that come with our decisions is needed and to ensure our own survival. So the Greenland Vikings' demise was basically caused by natural events and human choices. So it seems that the Vikings weren't exactly in tune with the new environment that they moved to. They were basically used to using their own ways and tried to make them happen in their new land, and that didn't work. So evidence of the Vikings' relationship with the land comes from the trash that they left behind, and also from atmospheric particles trapped by the ice sheets there. Falling snow absorbs particles from the atmosphere. When it compacts and freezes into ice, those particles are preserved, stratified, which means kind of layered, and leave a perfect sample in the atmosphere over time. Go home to your freezer, pop open an ice cube, look at it real closely. You can see trapped in there a little bit of a gray, whitish center. Well, that's trapped air bubbles in there, and if you did that over thousands of years, you could do the same thing. You could drill in, pull out the gases, put them in an analyzer, and then analyze the gases in there. When you do so, the analysis of the layers over time would show you changes in atmosphere over where the Vikings were settling in Greenland. And this period of the mini ice age, coupled with the self-inflicted environmental damage, was inconsistent with survival, which means basically the atmosphere was warming a bit, it was changing, their methodologies of living on the land were not consistent with what was happening in nature around them, and when you put two and two together, it just did not help, was not conducive to their survival as a species in Greenland. So these ice cores that the scientist is taking right down there with the Canadian flag on the arm that says Eclipse Ice Drill will pull out core samples. And these core samples will look through layers and layers of ice. And this is known to be what's called empirical data. It's basically when scientists go out, take data, they get dirty or cold or frozen, and they pull the stuff up and they look at it and measure it and calculate it and record it and study it and observe it and do all that stuff, as opposed to theoretical, which is basically running calculations and running computer simulations, oftentimes based on empirical evidence. But this is what empirical data will show you. When they analyze it, it will show you that the soil that had blown into the lakes indicated that soil erosion was happening well before the mini ice age occurred. And if this soil erosion had escalated, it could have been done to overgrazing or denuding of the land or losing of soil anchors and soil being blown away. So the overgrazing was basically done by cows, eating up all the grass, or the Vikings pulling down all the trees and the shrubs to make room for the grasses to grow in order for the cows to eat. This would then denude, or it would strip the landscape of all of the features, essentially, or macro features, I should say, like bushes and trees, and replacing them with sort of a bare, kind of grassy state that is kind of unstable. Well, when you lose those roots of anchors down there to hold that soil down, that rich soil, it starts to get blown away and dried out, and then it will drift away, and decreasing the quality because it will reduce the thickness of the overlying topsoil, which is where everything grows, and you'll end up getting into just the sand, which is not very conducive to growing healthy, fertile products. So it's mentioned that grassland was also used to insulate their homes, typically 10 acres per house. So not only were they pulling up the land to make room for their cows, they were also ripping up the topsoil to keep themselves warm in their homes. Well, what's wrong with that, right? Don't we do that today? Well, let's see. The Greenland Vikings' demise was caused by natural events and human choices. So they were kind of had two things going on. They had, today we can see that there are a few major concerns for natural events and human choices as it affects the planet. We obviously may have all heard of burning of fossil fuels, right? Your cars, your engine, your oils, deforestation, burning fossil fuels. Some of the consequences there are releasing all the CO2 gas, when in turn may cause sea level rise through various mechanisms, and we could possibly use alternative energy sources. They can be less pollution, but they can be quite costly, such as wind farms, solar, tidal turbines, and whatever else. We have deforestation, which is how the Vikings ripped up and denuded all the land that rips down the trees. What you also have is habitat loss. You don't just reduce the land, the fertility of the land, you reduce anything that is living in it. So if you rip down a tree to make room for your cow to graze, whatever was living in that tree, such as birds or beetles or even snakes, depending on where you are, you'll just destroy that habitat too. And then you'll need to irrigate. So no longer will water just be available there through trapped roots and what's called transpiration water that kind of comes out of plants naturally. We now have to bring water in to there through long aqueduct. Here, a wicked problem. These wicked problems are those challenges that come up with multiple stakeholders and different potential solutions. They're very complicated, and there's not usually one clear winner. So how then can we respond to environmental problems and work with people to help society cope with all these changes? If we know we need more produce or we need more beef, where are we going to grow the beef? In the richest parts in the country? The poorest parts of the world? It's a very, very difficult debate. So the more information we know, and working together is typically thought of as a decent thing. So the sustainable development model is basically doing this. Unlike the Norwegians of Iceland, the Vikings of Greenland maintained the old ways with wood and livestock without long-lasting consideration of vanishing landscapes. So basically, the Vikings or the Norwegians were trying to use what they had, not what they could bring with them. So when one civilization went one place, they said, okay, we can't grow our cattle as big here, but let's go see if we can fish and get some sea out of the ocean. Didn't happen over there. Did not happen over there. So sustainable development, right? We have a lot in common in the Vikings. This whole case study was meant to give you this basic picture. What is this idea? We have a lot in common. We really do. Farming practices, livestock production, topsoil degradation, loss of soil fertility, over-harvesting for forests. Our consequences are loss of habitat and diversity, soil erosion, water pollution, and the introduction of invasive species. Our additional problem is paramount. Right now, not like in the early 900s, when the Vikings were going over to Greenland, our Earth is at a huge population. Earth's resources are limited to a carrying capacity. That means there's only a finite number of people this planet can support before it literally cannot support anymore. Have one piece of like a head of lettuce in a room with one person, then 2 people, then 3 people, then 4 people. Well, if you add 10 people in there, how much of the head of lettuce can each person have if you have 10 people in one room splitting one head of lettuce? Now multiply that model on the earth and think about, instead of one head of lettuce, you have this food supply, and then you have 8 billion people you need to feed. Well, at some point, physically, from the laws of physics, we just can't simply grow enough to feed everybody. That would be the carrying capacity. And how does this come back to you? Okay, it basically comes back to you because our attitudes and your attitudes frequently prevent us from responding effectively to environmental change. It's kind of like the I'm not worried about it, it's not really affecting me kind of thing. I'm going to drive a big, huge SUV because I don't feel it getting any warmer down here in South Florida. It's always warm. Well, this is what the Vikings did, and ultimately led to their civilization demise. However, it's a little bit more complicated today because we have more people, more technology to work with to help us in our our existence on the planet. So when we think about sustainable development, and then we think about how you are involved, well, your attitude toward the environment can help or hurt the ability to respond to any change the scientists may predict. Well, these ideas of technological fixes, where human ingenuity and science will be able to solve problems we run into, somebody else will fix it. Kind of like, someone else is working on it, I don't need to deal with it. We can evaluate and respond. Move forward based on the best available evidences. We have all the options, right? I mean, look, they must know what to do, right? I don't need to do anything. There's the gloom and doom attitude, there's nothing we can do. Just give up, ride the storm out. Won't be too bad while you're here for another 50 years or so, right? But after that, you won't be around, so the planet's over. And then there's the rosy optimism. Don't worry about it. It will all work out. The Earth has been here for billions of years, and we'll be just fine. Don't worry about it. Of all of these, which one might you be? Well, the thing about this idea that we can become more sustainable. Natural ecosystems are a model of sustainability. They use energy and matter in ways that ensure those resources continue to be available. This is the difference. Putting this idea in the forefront is a much better idea. So the natural ecosystems are a model of sustainability. They use energy and matter in ways that ensure those resources continue to be available. What does that mean? That means 2 acorns will never occupy the same exact plot of land because one acorn would never be able to live. The other acorn would take up all the resources. Sounds like a weird example, but that's kind of what it means. But all organisms will need a constant, reliable source of energy. For nature, it's the sun. The sun with its photosynthetic organisms that convert light energy to chemical energy that can be stored or passed up through the food chain. But foxes don't make photosynthesis from the sun. Absolutely right. But fox might eat a rabbit, and the rabbit might eat the grass that takes up the energy from the sun. And that energy is cycled throughout the nature, called a trophic ecologic cycle. Pretty interesting, huh? Matter can be recycled indefinitely, so that when the waste from organisms becomes apparent, others becomes a resource. Hey, what do you think we do with all that cow dung? Manure. It goes right back into the fields to go help us grow the next crop. Yep, that cow just went, and now it's helping to organize and grow the next crop of something that you might have on your dinner plate. Pretty interesting. Diversity will also ensure that there will be a variety of ways that energy can be trapped. So just like the cows reuse their stuff, we can reduce our waste and reuse our products that we use, and some people do. Some people make compost piles, but we can recycle. We can take our soda cans and turn them into car parts. We can understand and have a better control of the human population by helping to reduce human birth rates. Now, this is a sensitive one. Reduce human birth rates. It doesn't mean put limits on how many people or give you rights or those who have rights to have children or not. It means controlling the rate or the rate. So it's the amount of people that are born per unit time. If we can slow that by chance, then we can help control how increasingly we are adding people to the planet. The other thing is the death rate. I mean, if we're bringing people on the planet, people got to die off too. That's what happens. It's the circle of life. Well, we are increasing length of living through medicine and healthier living. And so if we increase the amount of people we put on the earth and we're lengthening the time that we're here, well, that should probably point to 1 and 1 together. Yes, that means more people on the planet in a quicker amount of time. And we can look at local human contributions in biodiversity, protecting biodiversity to help us achieve what it is we're trying to mimic in nature. Right? It's nice to go into a forest to see all these different interactions between different ecosystems, and they're all depending on each other to survive. And we can do that too, starting in a local area like FIU campus or Miami, and expand it on out. So in moving forward now, we are just looking at some of the issues that we have to deal with. When we think about all these things, it's all great. It's stuff to really think about. It's hard. It's very there's conflict. There's some resonance there. There's a lot of different moving pieces, and that's why environmental science is so hard. So humanity faces some challenges in dealing with environmental issues because many times cultural norms, taboos, and status symbols are in conflict. What might be considered some best practices in environmental sustainability. For example, the Greenland Vikings built wooden cathedrals and consumed huge amounts of beef, refused to eat the readily available fish, and refused to accept the help from the Inuits and other people who were around. So, well, how do you make these huge wooden cathedrals? You gotta chop down all the trees to get the wood. Okay, you chop down the trees, you degrade the quality of the land, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. If you have a lot of beef around and that's all you need to do is eat beef, and there's plenty of fish in the sea, but you as a culture don't eat fish, well, what's going to happen? Oops, we're over here. Okay, each farmer benefits equally because each farmer has a different cow. You see blue, red, pink, and then yellow. If one farmer adds 2 more cows, the commons becomes degraded. So you can see that the red farmer added 2 more cows, and now he or she has more cows than the other cows. Because these 3 cows now are getting the benefit of all of the cows, but this farmer has 3 cows. So all 4 farmers share in the degradation, but the farmer with the 3 cows gets the benefit because he has more cows. So there's more degradation going into the land. As you can see, there's more brown pieces of grass because there's more work being done on the land, but one farmer has more cows than the other farmer. So the other farmers then to combat this add also cows to be on the same level. And so it's kind of like, well, if he has or she has 3 cows, then I'm going to add 3 cows, then I'm going to have 3 cows. And so now there's some equity because before then, the farmer with the red cows seemed to be, a larger enterprise. I have 3, you have 1. I make more money than you kind of thing. And now this is happening. But over time, the degradation of the land goes down even more. And so you can see that the quality of the grass that the cows are now eating aren't as good. The quality of the cows are much more skinny and not getting the nutrition that they need. And therefore, the land is starting to degrade. It's not being able to support as many of the cows because there's not enough time for the grass to go back to be sustainable for the cows to eat healthy. So we're basically getting more malnourished cows. That's not going to help us. We need healthy cows. The same thing can happen with fish. We start using fishing techniques that catches everything. I mean, how do we distinguish anything that can swim into a net? But over time, laws and things and different technologies of nets have come into play where it changes how some things are, how overfishing is done. But this is a big issue. You can see here, right? Modern fishing is giant nets, and they basically catch anything. If more fish are taken over the number of years, basically population is going to start reducing because we're taking out more fish than we can allow to reproduce and eat. So therefore, we have fewer reproducing fish, spawning fewer fish, yet we are demanding more from the fish stock because we are supplying the earth with more human beings. So we have more human beings competing for lower quality land and beef and or lower quality and less available seafood, hence the fish. And so that's an issue of fishing. And these, by the way, are all potential topics you might become interested in if you wanted to keep going and move further in the class. Okay? Moving right along here, we have just this idea now of going into pesticides. So pesticides are very beneficial for crops as they keep the amount of pests down that will eat the crops and hopefully and possibly eat all the stalks of corn or whatever. And so we can spray them to kill them and hopefully not hurt us in the process. You keep doing that though, and next thing you know is only the types of crops, only the types of pests that survive will be able to survive the form of pesticide that we've developed to handle the pest population. So what do we have to do? Well, instead of just spraying it then with this pesticide, and you can see the blue pests that were surviving, we now have to give it a higher dose, right? So 10 cc's weren't doing anything. Let's give it 20 cc's and see if it kills that pest. So now we have to give even more pesticides. So we're spraying our food with even more product that is beneficial to us in a way that it's trying to reduce the pesticides, the pests, but we are just totally bleaching it and filling it with this product. Is that an issue for you? So in thinking all this, we're coming to our close here. There's a few terms and things to think about as we move forward. Okay, there's this idea of an anthropocentric view, this biocentric, and this ecocentric. And it's just kind of these ways you think about the world as we approach this course and approach this lesson in this unit. And as you move forward throughout the semester, we're going to explore lots of issues. But how we view the world and our existence within the world is influenced by your cultural, religious, personal experiences, where you live in the world, and ultimately determines your environmental ethic, what you feel is right. That is basically where it comes back to you. What can you do to all of this? Sorry, not just the humans, but you can see the other species such as the bear, the bison, and the eagle, and the plants there, and everything else. And then you finally have the ecocentric world. And the ecocentrum is an idea where all living creatures and non-living processes are one of a shared ecosystem. So the value is given to the importance of the ecosystem as a whole, including interactions such as those between the wind and the soil, between the species, predators and their prey, as well as natural processes such as the water cycle or the carbon cycle or nitrogen cycles, and all these things that just kind of national parks. When we started moving into the Homestead Act, and we gave kind of people the rights to go settle the unsettled land of the Wild West, and they really started having to be on the lookout for how can we best use this land, because it was starting to be competition came around and everything. And then after that, as people started to explore the country and it was expanding, excuse me, national parks started to come in, and then as soon as we started to basically take the science, advance some sciences and apply them to what was some known things to be occurring, such as pollution, the Silent Spring, in the Clean Air Act, when the Cuyahoga River caught fire. We looked at the Clean Water Act, at the Superfund Act, which is the federal register for the most polluted sites in the country, and all these things that were starting to take effect on the humans and the plants and animals around them and degrade the world. We started to take care of those things in the United States and pass some legislation, and then move into an international realm where we went to the Montreal Protocol, the Kyoto Protocol, 2005 Millennium Ecosystem, and really leading to an international effort, right? So we're not quite there yet. We are working hard all over the world. Legislation is a slow and meticulous process, but it is one that begins with the individual and goes to the world around the individual. So according to your text, reading through the chapter 1 here, hopefully you get a better understanding of what this idea of environmental science is and how you can see yourself in this. When you look through this personal choices dialogue box we have here, you can see that there are individual steps that would lead to group actions, and then ultimately what these group actions might do to get involved with some policy change that could happen both on the local or campus level, or even if you were an aspiring politician or legislative person, even into the governments. So moving forward, hopefully this first chapter will allow you to explore some of this, and I look forward to continuing into the chapter as you explore all these issues. And last but not least, coming back to this existence of this failed Viking civilization on the southern tip of Greenland and the North Atlantic Oceans back in the 900s AD. What do you think? Will this be us? Well, until next time, I hope you had a great lecture 1, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon. Have a great day.